Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of our Justice and Pieces guest speaker series. Today, we are joined, I think, third time, maybe fourth time here with Kayla Stephenson. So I think it's been at least a year. I think the last time Roxana was around, I think she's now graduated, and I think in law school off in
Wow.
England there. So time does
Wow.
definitely fly by. But Kayla, maybe you could tell us a
Wow.
little bit more about yourself in case, from some of my students, this might be the first time they're meeting you, and tell us what you're up to.
Well, I am so happy to be here this evening. Thank you so much, Jean Paul, for inviting me here again for a third time. I think it's the third time. I'm very happy to be here. I do have a background in paralegal education. I was always interested in law. My sister is a lawyer. My mom, who's retired now, she worked in corrections. I have excellent examples to follow. Right now, my title is mediator, arbitrator, adjudicator, and now facilitator. Um, uh, I think I think that's a little bit about myself.
Okay, so let's start. I mean, I think the last time, I think you were just in the middle of doing some work there in ADR. I think you were talking to us about the benefits of alternative dispute resolution. So maybe you could tell us a little bit more of kind of what you were up to, and then we'll switch over to the adjudicative side there. But tell us more a bit about your experience with alternative dispute resolution.
Sure. So I went to school a long, long, long time ago, and I had an alternative dispute resolution class, and I loved it. And then I left, I worked in law firms. I worked for the Ministry of Attorney General for a number of years. And then I went back to adjudication. I opened up my own well, not legal, but mediation firm. It's called Legal Mediation Firm. And I think that was about the time when I talked to you last year when I was kind of relaunching it again. Um, but in the middle of that, I took some training and just jumped into adjudication. But before that, I did some arbitration training as well. So I did mediation training as well prior to the arbitration training. I did mediation training with Helen Lightstone Mediation, Riverdale Mediation, and in my last session here, I was talking about ADRIO and FIDRIO. So ADRIO is Alternative Dispute Resolution Institute of Ontario, and FIDRIO is Family Dispute Institution of Ontario.
So yeah, so for any students or anyone listening, if they're interested in getting into mediation, let's go with mediation. What are some of the things that you can recommend for them, and what have you learned, from doing it over the years? What do they have in store for them if that's the route that they're looking at?
Oh, definitely. And things have changed so much. I think, ADR, people are, I don't know if it's just my community or people are just talking about ADR. If you want to get involved, those places that I just mentioned, ADRIO and FIDRIO. Training, you can do Riverdale Mediation. York University also brought back their mediation sessions, as well as Helen Lightstone Mediation, but she's recently changed her name to the Quintessentials. You can check those places out in order for you to get started in your mediation journey. I also want to add, because I had a conversation with one of my colleagues, that you don't necessarily need to get into law or have a law background in order to get into mediation. You can use mediation in other jobs, in other avenues, and in other areas. And for me, mediation helps with adjudication as well.
All right, so let's tell us about the path there from mediation over to adjudication, and kind of where that came about, and what are the different hats that you're putting on right now in terms of the adjudication sphere?
I have so many hats, John Paul, I can't even hold them. I have to put on one at a time. Or if I put them on, they'll stack up. So I don't know exactly because it happened so fast. So I don't even know exactly how I got from mediation to adjudication, but I'll just step it back a little bit. How I wanted to start was getting some training. So if you've heard me speak before here on here or anywhere else, I always advocate for um, professional development. So yes, I have a mediation firm, and yes, it was doing very well, still is. And yes, I got some arbitration training, and I was doing that, but I just wanted to do more. I wanted to do more, so I took some adjudication training on with the Ontario Bar Association. So I'm a student member of the Ontario Bar Association. So I took some adjudication. They have an adjudication certificate, as well as a judicial certificate that I took as well. So I started there, and then I looked around a little bit more, and I saw that Osgoode Hall Law School has an adjudication certificate that I was very, very interested in. So I was able to take that certificate, and I graduated in November last year, and I got my certificate. And it was a very, very good experience. I'm not too sure anybody else that does adjudication or has adjudication certificates, but hands down, that course is number one. They have another session coming up in May. So I encourage everyone to take a look at Osgoode Hall Professional Development website and take a look at that certificate and adjudication course.
Now, speaking of Osgoode Hall, before I forget later, congratulations there on the Osgoode Black Law Students Association presenting you with the Lincoln Alexander Award there. So congratulations on that.
Thank
And maybe you
you.
can tell us a bit about how that came about and what that means to you.
Oh my gosh. So I received my award back in February, and I was nominated because of the work that I do in the community. So I identify as a Black woman. So I do a lot of work within the Black community. And some of that work includes I am on the executive board of the ACLCO, which is the Association of Community Legal Clinics of Ontario. So there's a lot of acronyms everyone has to remember. So I'm on the executive of that, which is the board for that. And how I got there was I volunteer at my community legal clinic in Brampton. So I'm chair of that board. And on that board, there is an anti-racist or anti-racism, anti-oppression committee that I chair. And then on the Association of Community Legal Clinics of Ontario, I co-chair the anti-racism, anti-oppression subcommittee on that. So when it comes to all of the legal clinics of Ontario, I am assisting those clinics with incorporating anti-racist, anti-oppression values, and I don't know where my words are today. I need them. So I'm assisting with incorporating that anti-racist, anti-oppression, those values into the legal clinic. I'm assisting with that in all of the legal clinics of Ontario, including the legal clinic that I chair as well. So I got that award. I'm staring at it right now. That's why I turned my head. I got it because of the work that I'm doing in the community and my advocacy for social justice. I'm also we'll be talking about my adjudication a little bit, and I am the youngest on the roster in Toronto. And I am the only on the roster right now, currently on the roster for each part.
Okay, that's great. And I think maybe certainly being on one of the clinics here in my community, and I think same thing I stress with my students, the importance of the community there. Perhaps maybe you can share a little bit more about, what are some of the opportunities, because certainly they're always in need of assistance and students and paralegal students in particular. Some of the opportunities that may be there for paralegals in terms of helping out, whether it's at the ACLCO level, or in your local community legal clinic?
Oh, definitely. So, community legal clinics definitely is the place to go. Whether they're hiring, there was a few legal clinics that were hiring actually recently, and I try to repost on my social media just to get it out there. They're hiring paralegals. Including my clinic as well. We'll be looking for one soon. So North Peel Dufferin Community Legal Clinic will be looking for one as well. So keep your eyes peeled on Twitter and on social media for that. You could always just go to your legal clinic, talk to the executive director there or anybody there. If you're interested in volunteering. Now things are opening back up. I don't know what the policies are for in-person. So I know that there was a lot of issues, and I've heard paralegals getting their hours or getting some, just something because of the pandemic. So things are opening up. Hopefully, your local legal community clinic will definitely assist with that. Hopefully, they're able to assist with that.
Okay, perfect. Now let's talk about what you just mentioned there previously there, the Health Professions Appeal and Review Board. So we have a tribunals class coming up for my students, and some of my students that are taking it right now with me. And I mentioned, there's hundreds, if not thousands, of these different tribunals across the country, and especially in Ontario. And here's one I think that to be honest, you asked me a few months ago, I would tell you I have no idea what this tribunal is. And
Right.
maybe you can tell us a little bit more about, first of all, maybe the scope, what it does, and kind of what the process is like for matters that would potentially appear before you.
Okay. So I'll step it back a little bit. So with the health professions, there are 26 health professions. So, and of those 26 health professions, they all have colleges. And colleges, well, I'm sure you all know. I mean, I'm not the teacher here. Definitely John Paul is the teacher here. But with all those colleges, they have their own processes. They have their own tribunal processes where paralegals can fit in just fine. So I didn't learn any of this in school. I learned this as I'm, going through the waves of life, that there's so many opportunities for paralegals, and your title doesn't have to just be paralegal. So it's amazing, honestly. The door is open, the world is open for paralegals. But so the Health Professions Appeals and Review Board, what they do is first, I can't speak too much about it, because the first thing is because I'm still training. So I'm very newly appointed. I was just appointed in November. And I think I'm chipping out a little bit. Can you hear me there? Okay, perfect. So I was just very newly appointed, so I haven't sat yet. So I haven't presided over any hearings yet. But what I can say is that there's a lot of training that I have to do first before I do that. So there's a lot of training for those adjudicators that before they begin sitting. But I can say the people that come before the Health Professions Appeal and Review Board, is any one of the 28 health professions, including veterinarians and their counsel, and the health practitioners, that specific health practitioner's client that has had an issue with a service that the health practitioner provided to them. So that's pretty much the scope of it. I think that's all I can say for that. I can't really say too much more because I haven't sat yet. I'll have to come back.
Yeah, we got our next year's talk there, and you can tell me how it was like a year from now or so. What about the other tribunal there, the Administrative Penalty Tribunal there? Maybe you can tell us a little bit more about that experience and what subject matter that they have.
Oh, definitely. So that one I have a lot more experience because I sit. So, and I sit by myself. So with each PARB, it's 3 of us. But for this one, it's just me. So my role as an adjudicator at the Administrative Penalty Tribunal is that I make decisions based on the evidence that's provided to me, and the owner of the vehicle or the persons acting on behalf of the owner with regards to any parking offenses that happen in the city of Toronto. So the process is, when someone gets a ticket, they can either pay for it or they dispute it. So when they dispute it, there's a two-part process. There is a screening officer process where they would dispute it at a screening officer level, and either the screening officer does the same thing. They make a decision, and if the person agrees with that decision, then they will pay the ticket, or if the ticket gets, what do they call it now, dropped, or they can go to the hearing officer level, which is myself, and they can have a hearing before me. So the matters that appear before me is everything from overnight parking to parking in an accessible space with no permit, which carries a larger fine. I usually, in one day sitting, I usually see about 15 people. So, or less, more or less 15 people. So my hearings are set in 30-minute increments. And I do have to accommodate those who need translators or those who have representatives appearing before them, which can take some time. So I must say that my time management skills, if they weren't that good before, they are definitely good now, because I haven't had any complaints.
Okay, so let's walk us through. You mentioned certainly that some of those fines will add up, right? I mean, it's not just like a $20 ticket that people are fighting and going all the way up to you. But maybe you can take one matter. I mean, obviously, I know you can't talk about specific matters, but let's make a fictitious fine here, and then they come before you. So how does that work? How's the process like? What happens?
So do you mean when someone is in front of me, like before me, when they come
let's say that it's before you now, and how does it, so you say you go through 15 of these matters, so I mean, I imagine they're not very long compared to a lot of other tribunal hearings. So how does it happen that they're before you, you look at the number, and what happens, let's say?
Okay, I'll just pick one of the parking in an accessible space with no permit. So if someone comes to me to my level and they're parked in an accessible space with no permit, sorry, I'm freezing a little bit. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, everything's fine here.
Perfect. I would actually do a lot of research before my hearings, because that helps me narrow down my hearing. So I have a little notebook that's similar in size to this one, and I would write down if there's any evidence that the person provides, if there's any where it is, and what I'm looking for, so that when I go in front of somebody and they're asking me, or they're telling me their story about I don't want to call it a story, but they're telling me their side, and what it is, why they're there. And I have specific questions that I want to ask them in order to get to the result. So if somebody has a permit, or they're saying that they have a permit, I would ask to see it at that point. Like, do you have the evidence for that to provide to me? Usually they would provide it before. And if they do have the permit, then I would dismiss the ticket, because they would have the permit. And that's what's required. So the ticket was given to them because the officer didn't see the permit. So if I saw the permit, then I would cancel the ticket. So that's how that would work. I would ask a few questions. I would let them tell me their side, and then I would make a decision and send out a hearing letter.
Okay, and is no are the officers typically there at that level, or is it just kind of the one side that's saying, hey, I didn't park here, or I didn't park overnight. It was 2 hours and 55 minutes, and I moved my
Mhm.
car in to the driveway at that time, or whatever the reason or the story, as you mentioned, or whatever their side of the story is. Is it kind of just them, or is the officers there saying, no, actually, that's not what happened. Here's what my notes are, etc.
That's a good question. So the officers are not required to be there, and they're not there. They don't appear. They don't have to be there. So all the officer has to provide is the ticket. And if you look, if anybody has received a parking ticket, you'll see that the ticket is just there. In other words, it's they're telling me that this is the truth. So they have their name. The officer's name is usually at the top. There's a signature usually at the bottom, and everything in between is the car, the date, the time, and the infraction, and what part of the code it is. And I'm supposed to take that as fact. And then any pictures that they have is just an addition. But as long as the ticket is there, the officer is not required to be there.
Now, does that, in terms of going through the process that you're getting that side, um, what are the things that they would typically raise? I mean, outside of, again, as you mentioned, the example there of a permit, and they show the permit, if there's a dispute of whether or not they did it, I mean, how can they establish that their story is especially because the officer's not there compared to the the ticket that the officers provide? Is there anything that they can do, or that you would look for in terms of, and especially where there's representation, like what are the things that the representatives are trying to highlight?
Um, the representatives, if the representatives are there, they just try to highlight. That's a little bit of a tricky question to answer. um, um, that's a tricky question. I don't know how to word it. I
Yeah,
don't know
okay,
how to
okay, I'm
word
trying to think
it.
of, I guess, what are some of the submissions, maybe generally, right, that you would hear from the representatives or a self-represented party about, not necessarily like the one we've already gone through, right, that about having the permit and it was just, they missed it. But in the situations where it's like overnight parking, or time limited parking, or maybe they didn't see some sign or something like that, that restricted parking for whatever reason. Is it just simply kind of a factual sort of submission, or is there a lot of legal submissions that come as well?
Oh, no, no legal submissions. Most people that come to the tribunal are unrepresented. So there's not many legal submissions at all. It's just their reason. And then I have to make a decision based on the evidence that they give me. And their evidence could be their verbal evidence as well. Some people provide documentation, and I consider those um, in order to make a decision.
I always think of the U.S. show where there's the judge there that they have it's usually like traffic or minor offenses, and then someone says, hey, I was, I remember one where I was a pizza delivery person. I was just there for a few minutes and so forth. Is that kind of, I mean, are there compassionate sort of submissions in
Oh,
terms of fines that can be made, or is it just strictly kind of whether or not they did it or not?
oh, definitely, definitely. So um, I wouldn't call it compassionate, but there are rules that I need to follow when it comes to allowing certain things. So, and I can use my discretion within the rules in order to make a decision. So anybody can say whatever it is that they want to say. And if I'm able to allow it within the rules, then I can. I can't really go based on, someone's story that they say, well, I don't want to call it a story, but their submissions when they say, oh, and they try to pull at the heartstrings. I can't make a decision based on that. I can hear them, and I can show, say I'm sorry, or show some type of empathy that way. But I can only make decisions based on what the rules allow me to make them.
Okay, perfect. So now, I mean, in both this aspect as well as before, we've talked about ADR and mediation and things. What can you share for students who are? I mean, some of them will have mock trials or mock ADRs coming up in the next couple of weeks. In terms of advocacy, right? What you've seen, again, what's worked, what's not worked. Let's maybe start with mediation and the ADR process. Because no, it's not exactly the same type of advocacy, right? You can't go into a mediation the same way you're going to go before an adjudicator or a tribunal and try the same technique. So let's start with mediation, and what are the sort of skills and tips that you can share for those who are advocating at before you or before any mediator, how to be more effective as an advocate.
That's a great question. And I was recently a judge for a moot competition, and it was so nice to see all of the students, and that was such an amazing experience. I think that for mediation, just keeping an open mind. Don't be dead set on what it is that your client wants. Be open to hearing what the other client wants, and look for your best your best outcome, like your best bottom line, and keep an open mind during that. I don't really have that many like paralegals or lawyers that come before me as a mediator. I don't have very many. But yeah, I think I would leave that there. Just go with an open mind, and it's always good to educate yourself. So if you're going into mediation, you're bringing a client into mediation, it would be good if you're able to take a mediation course, or just so that you can be that type of person for your client.
And then what about on sort of the tribunal side, right? If it doesn't go through mediation and it has to go to a hearing, whether it's an administrative penalty tribunal or any of the various health professions, for example, or anything else. What are some things that you've learned over the years about being a better advocate at that stage?
For advocates, I would probably just keep it my advice would be just basic advice, like be polite, and be very knowledgeable about what it is that you're speaking about. Make sure you're knowledgeable and be on time. That one pops up sometimes, and be well prepared.
Now, we were talking about your hats there earlier, and certainly you have had a lot of different experiences all over. And I think certainly sometimes students think that they have to have this path, right? I got to go to school, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to be here. What can you share from all of those different experiences and kind of the journey that students are going to start taking, or I mean, they've already taken, even coming back to school or deciding to become a paralegal? What can you kind of share with, the importance of having those varied opportunities, and certainly you stressed, continued professional development. I mean, you never stop learning, right? So what can you share kind of about that, and anything that they can take away from that?
Okay. So I can say that, when I was in school, I said all those years ago, I said I wanted to be a lawyer. And I'm an adjudicator. So it didn't quite work out the way that I had planned. And that's okay. That's okay. Learn to be flexible, and to be able to pivot. So if something happens, be able to say, okay, well, I can't do this right now. I'm going to have to do this. So when I was working in the courts, and the courts doesn't have full-time hours, so I decided to open up a mediation firm and, start working for other mediation firms and stuff like that, contracting out. You have to learn to be able to pivot and be okay. I'm a little religious, so if you're not there, then you're not supposed to be there. So there's so many times in my life where, I'm laughing now, but it wasn't funny then. I was like, oh my gosh, I really want to be in this position. I really want to be here. And I didn't get it, or I didn't stay, or my contract wasn't renewed, and I would be upset, and I was told, my partner was telling me, like, if you weren't, you're not supposed to be there. And that's why you're not there, because better is coming for you. And I'm looking today like, okay, yeah, he was right. Better came for me. So I know it's hard in that moment where you're like, oh, I really want to do this, but just learn to keep an open mind. Like I said before, educate yourself, like do other things kind of in the area of where you are, learn more, do your CPTs, all of that stuff. It'll get you to where your better is. And even when you get to that place where you're like, oh, okay, well, I like it here, always strive for better, always learn more, be able to diversify yourself. It'll be helpful in the future.
And obviously, someone's going to say, well, JP, that's obviously easier said than done. But how can you kind of deal with that in terms of, you mentioned, look, this is not the place where I'm supposed to be. But because often, I mean, those setbacks, and certainly I've even recently, people have reached out and said, hey, it's very difficult right now. How do you kind of push forward and sort of fully embrace kind of that mentality there, that there is something that's out there? I mean, not to be discouraged. I mean, I think especially now with everything kind of in flux, as we we went into a pandemic, we're coming out of a pandemic. I mean, things might be in person, things might be half in person, things might be remote still in some places. I mean, it may change on a weekly basis. What can you how did that work for you, and what more now that you can add to what you were just saying, that for those who may be facing sort of that path there to get through everything, and anything further you can add?
You know what? That's happened. So I have some people on my LinkedIn that have seen me and that have reached out to me based off of our session last time, or any other speaking session that I've done. And one time they just called me, and they had a call, and they said, you know what, Kayla, like, this is so hard. It's so hard finding a job right now in COVID. And it's so hard, being a paralegal. It's so hard. Like, what could I do? Turning to talking to somebody. I gave her some words of motivation. I even did like a little dance, like, you can do it. You'll get through it. Just focus. Like, having someone, even someone you don't even know, talk to and tell how you feel and ask for advice. I've always put myself out there as that person, even though, I'm a little bit busier than I was before. I'm always available to speak to people, and give words of encouragement, or give advice. I found that that's helped some of the people that I've talked to, and it helped me as well.
Now, one thing that we've talked about with many different people here, and certainly conversation has been changing over the last few years, is about taking care of your own mental health. And certainly we're in a profession, both as legal professionals as well as mediators. I mean, dealing with a lot of the conflict that comes into there, as well as an adjudicator. And I think you had written something probably last spring, maybe, or maybe, I hope I'm not mixing it up, like something about self-care, and self-care is not being selfish, right? And maybe you could tell us a bit more about the importance of taking care of your own mental health, and that you're not at sort of the wits of the profession, that you have to go give, that doing you, right, is perfectly fine.
Yeah. Thank you so much. That was like 2 years ago now. I did that. I was writing for Fidrio, and writing is helpful for mental health as well. So I can't really remember, to be honest with you, what I wrote, but exactly what I wrote. But I think mental health is very, very important, especially with COVID, working from home. I've experienced a lot of things working from home. It's not as great as you know, a lot of other people have said that I've heard. You know, it's good to take care of yourself. Turning off your computer. I had a hard time doing that at one point where when I was working from home, I was constantly checking my computer, constantly checking my phone, constantly writing emails and responding at crazy hours. You know, turn off your computer, turn off your cell phone, and to be honest with you, turn off not just social media, but the media in general. So CP24, all of those news channels, turn them off. It's good for your mental health. When you turn it back on, I promise you, you haven't missed anything. They will report whatever you missed. So turn off the devices, read a book, write. You know, I was, like I just said, I wrote for Fidrio. Paint. I go to paint night sometimes. Garden. It's now I'm excited. Well, spring I think is here. I don't know. We're gonna have to ask Mother Nature. So one day I get excited, next day I'm like sad. But garden. Spend time outdoors. Now, you know, meet friends, meet people. I'm gonna be meeting people that I've been working with throughout the pandemic, and I've never met them in person. I'm super excited. That's definitely good for your mental health. I think that's it. Yeah, just take care of yourself and make sure that, you know, like I said, I wear a lot of hats. I wear many other hats when I'm at home. You know, I'm a daughter, I'm a sister, I'm a mother, you know, I'm a, you know, a girlfriend. You know, you gotta make sure that you have time for yourself, and take time for yourself, because you are your most important person.
Perfect. Yeah, I think those are great words, maybe to kind of segue into our last question, and same question each time there. So I don't know, you know, if you go back to the well, you have something a little bit different. But any final words of wisdom? And again, it's nice, kind of. I mean, now that I'm entering my third year, that, you know, some people I've talked to a couple of times, that it's nice to see kind of the progression, right? That, to me, it kind of emphasizes what we talked about, you know, the first time, right? Is that there's all these different opportunities, and then, you know, you come back 2 years later and like, look, see, they are those opportunities. I was right. I'm not making it up. So any final words of wisdom there, Kayla? And thanks as always for joining us and sharing all your knowledge with my students.
Thank you. So I just want to thank you, John Paul, first, for having me back on your third season. I'm so happy to be here, although it's come to an end. I'm so happy on the success of this podcast. I hear everybody talking about it. I rant and rave about it. I wish I had this when I was in school and learning, because I would have been able to see for myself instead of learning. But there are so many opportunities. There's so many people in so many different positions. It's just amazing. And this is valuable information. And I want to thank you so much for providing this platform for your students and for people like me to be able to speak. So words that I have to share with anyone interested in being in this field, I just want you to remember, just like I said before, your goal won't always be in one straight line. You have to learn to pivot, adapt to the changing times, and just go for it. That's what I did when I applied for these adjudication positions. I was knowledgeable. I felt confident. Maybe wasn't at first. Now I definitely am. Just go for it. Just go for it. You never know what you're going to get, and you might be happy with where you end up. I'm always also available to speak if anybody has any questions about me or paralegal profession or mediation profession or adjudication profession. Just shoot me an email. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. I can't promise next business day, but I am available for anybody interested in learning and just looking for any kind of advice that I can give.
Perfect. So thanks so much, Kayla. All the best there, and congratulations on the new roles there. And looking forward to hearing more about the health profession board there the next time I talk to you, so you can hopefully have some matters before you and tell me what those are like afterwards. So thanks again, and thanks everyone for tuning in, and take care. See you hopefully tomorrow.
Thank you, everyone.